My name is Sarah Thompson, and like everyone else, I hate Mondays. But this Monday wasn't just the typical grind, it was something far worse. I woke up to my alarm blaring, red digits flashing 6 a.m. Groaning, I slapped it off and dragged myself through my usual morning routine. Everything felt hazy, like I was moving through thick fog. I grabbed my coffee from the corner cafe and trudged into my office building, only to notice something odd: the lobby was empty. Usually, it was buzzing with people, but today, it was just silent. I shrugged it off and took the elevator up to my floor. The office was eerily quiet, and my footsteps echoed in the dimly lit space. I sat at my desk, turned on my computer, and started my day. But as I glanced at the clock, it read 8:15 a.m. I worked for what felt like hours, but every time I checked the clock, it still showed 8:15 a.m. I refreshed my phone, 8:15. I checked the wall clock, 8:15. The realization hit me like a cold wave: I was stuck. The time wasn't moving. I tried calling my coworker Jenna, but her phone buzzed on her desk, and she was nowhere to be seen. The office was empty, the silence pressing against my ears. I dialed my parents, friends, anyone who might answer. Every call went straight to voicemail. Panic surged through me as I ran to the elevator, but the buttons were unresponsive. The stairwell was worse. No matter how many flights I descended, I always ended up on the same floor. My heart pounded as I banged on doors and screamed for help, but there was no response, just my own voice echoing back at me. I returned to my desk, the computer screen glaring at me with the same emails, all stamped 8:15 a.m. Hours blurred into one another, and the darkness outside never lifted. I was trapped in an endless loop, the same minute repeating itself over and over, alone. I don't know how long I've been here now, days, weeks. Time has lost all meaning. My food and water are running low. I'm writing this in the hopes that someone finds it, that someone understands what happened here. Because it's still Monday. It's always Monday. And I'm stuck, forever trapped in the beginning of a week that never ends.
My name is Alex Parker, and I never thought a simple yard sale find would turn my life into a nightmare. It was a bright Saturday morning when I spotted the old toy robot buried under a pile of forgotten junk. It was a vintage piece, red and blue, with big round eyes and a wind-up key on its back. I bought it for $1, thinking it would make a cool addition to my collection. When I got home, I set it on my workbench in the garage, eager to see if it still worked. I flicked the switch on its side, but nothing happened. The robot was just a lifeless hunk of metal. I left it there and went about my day, not giving it much thought. That night, I woke up to a faint whirring sound. Groggy, I sat up and listened, but the house was still. Figuring it was just the old pipes or my imagination, I went back to sleep. The next morning, though, I found the robot in the middle of the garage floor, far from where I'd left it. Maybe it had fallen, I thought, though it seemed unlikely. I put it back on the shelf, but the following night, the noise returned, mechanical whirring, followed by a soft click click click. I grabbed a flashlight and headed to the garage, my pulse quickening. There it was, the robot standing upright on the workbench, staring at me with eyes that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. A shiver ran down my spine. I picked it up and noticed the wind-up key was slowly turning on its own, despite the switch still being off. I shook it, trying to make it stop, but the key kept turning, clicking louder with each rotation. Suddenly, the robot's eyes lit up with a bright red glow, and it moved, a slow, jerky motion as it raised one tiny arm, pointing straight at me. The robot's mouth opened, and a garbled voice crackled out, distorted like an old tape. "Help me!" The words sent a chill through my bones, and I dropped it, watching as it clattered to the floor. But instead of lying still, it slowly sat up, its gaze fixed on me. I tried to smash it with a hammer, but the robot screamed, a high-pitched, ear-splitting noise that filled the entire garage. I covered my ears and backed away, my heart racing. The noise stopped abruptly, and I was left alone in the dark, panting and terrified. The next morning, I found the robot in the kitchen, standing on the counter as if mocking me. I grabbed it, rushed outside, and buried it deep in the backyard, hoping that would be the end of it. That night, I heard the whirring sound again, this time right outside my bedroom door. I bolted upright, drenched in sweat. The robot's voice echoed in the hallway, louder now, clearer. "Help me!" I don't know where the toy came from or why it seems so desperate to find me, but I know it's still out there, waiting. Every night the sound gets closer, no matter how far I try to run.
My name is Yasmin, and I never believed in the supernatural until I moved into my grandmother's old house. It was a small, dilapidated cottage on the outskirts of town, isolated and forgotten. After she passed, the house fell to me, and I planned to clean it out and sell it. But from the moment I stepped inside, I felt something was wrong. The air was heavy and still, and the house felt like it was holding its breath. As I walked through the dusty rooms, I heard faint whispers, too soft to understand but enough to make my skin crawl. I brushed it off, thinking it was just the wind or my nerves. But the whispers didn't stop. In the living room, I found an old wooden box, intricately carved and hidden in a dusty corner. Inside were prayer beads, a small piece of cloth, and an old, rusty key. As I held the key, I heard my name whispered softly from behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. The air was cold, and the whispers grew louder, circling me like a breeze. I tried to focus on my task, but the whispers followed me, growing louder each night. Shadows danced on the walls, moving unnaturally. I could feel something watching me, just out of sight. I reached out to my aunt, who told me stories of the jinn, spirits my grandmother feared. She believed a jinn had attached itself to her, and now it was here, in the house, with me. One night, the whispers became unbearable, echoing through the walls, overlapping and urgent. I locked myself in the bedroom, clutching the prayer beads from the box. The air grew cold, and the door rattled as if something was trying to get in. Shadows seeped under the door, twisting and writhing, forming a dark figure with burning eyes. The figure loomed over me, the air heavy and electric. I held up the rusty key in desperation, and the shadow recoiled, hissing like steam. It retreated, dissolving into the floor and disappearing under the door, leaving only silence and a faint, acrid smell. I fled the house that night, leaving everything behind. I keep the key with me, a reminder of what I encountered. The whispers have stopped, but sometimes, just as I'm drifting off to sleep, I hear my name, softly, from the shadows. My name is Sarah, and I've always loved chocolate. So when a new shop called Choco Delights opened in town, I was one of the first to visit. The place was small and cozy, with shelves lined with handcrafted chocolates. The air was thick with the rich aroma of cocoa, making my mouth water. An elderly woman with sharp eyes stood behind the counter. She offered me a sample, a small, dark truffle wrapped in gold foil. "Try it," she urged with a thin smile. I took a bite, and the taste was extraordinary, sweet at first, then bitter with a strange metallic aftertaste. It was odd but addictive. I bought a box, eager to try more. That night, I couldn't resist. I ate one chocolate, then another, unable to stop. The taste grew stranger with each bite, the metallic flavor stronger, like blood. Suddenly, a sharp pain stabbed my stomach. I doubled over but dismissed it as overeating. The next morning, I woke up feeling nauseous, with a bitter taste lingering in my mouth. My reflection in the mirror startled me. My skin was pale, and dark circles framed my eyes. Despite feeling sick, I craved more chocolate. I grabbed another piece from the box, but the taste was different, off, rotten almost. I spat it out, but the craving didn't go away. I decided to return to the shop to complain, but when I arrived, the store was gone. The space was empty, as if it had never been there. Confused, I asked the bakery next door, but they insisted there hadn't been a chocolate shop in years. Panic set in as the pain in my stomach worsened, a sharp, twisting sensation that left me gasping. At home, the pain became unbearable. My stomach bulged unnaturally, and I felt something moving beneath the skin. Terrified, I grabbed a knife and made a small cut, hoping to relieve the pressure. Thick, dark liquid oozed out, followed by something small and hard, a tiny, perfectly formed chocolate truffle. I stared in horror as more chocolates pushed their way out, spilling onto the floor. I couldn't stop them, the pain and pressure growing with each writhing mass. My vision blurred, and I collapsed, surrounded by the sickly sweet scent of cocoa and the dark, glistening shapes that had once been my favorite treat. Now, every time I see chocolate, I feel a stab of fear. I still taste the bitterness, the metallic tang that reminds me of what's inside. I've sworn off sweets, but sometimes, late at night, I feel the faintest stir beneath my skin, as if the chocolates are still there, waiting to finish what they started.
My name is Mia, and there's a tree in my backyard that has haunted me since childhood. It's tall, twisted, and dead-looking, with gnarled branches that claw at the sky like skeletal fingers. My parents always told me to stay away from it, but they never explained why. They called it the crooked tree, and warned me that it was cursed. I thought they were just trying to scare me, but now I wish I had listened. When I was a kid, I used to stare at the tree from my bedroom window. It always seemed to lean closer to the house, even though it never moved. On windy nights, the branches would scrape against the window, making a sound like nails on glass. I would lie awake, terrified, convinced the tree was watching me. One summer, my curiosity got the better of me. I climbed out of my window and approached the tree. The air around it was colder, and the ground felt soft and damp under my feet. I reached out to touch the bark, but it was slick and warm, almost like skin. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my hand, and I pulled back to see a thin cut on my palm. The tree seemed to shudder, and I stumbled back, feeling dizzy and sick. After that night, strange things started happening. I'd wake up with scratches on my arms and legs, as if I'd been clawed in my sleep. My dreams were filled with the tree's twisted branches reaching for me, wrapping around my throat, pulling me into the earth. I tried to tell my parents, but they dismissed it as nightmares. The worst was when I noticed the tree had grown closer to the house. Each day it seemed to inch forward, its roots digging through the yard, dark and pulsing like veins. I watched in horror as it crept closer to my window, its shadow stretching across the walls of my room. One night, I woke up to find the branches pressed against the glass, scratching and tapping. The sound was relentless, like it was trying to get in. I shut the curtains, but the noise grew louder, filling my head until I couldn't take it anymore. I ran outside, desperate to make it stop. Standing before the tree, I felt an overwhelming urge to touch it again, as if it was calling to me. I reached out, and the branches wrapped around my arm, pulling me closer. I screamed, but no sound came out. The bark split open, revealing a dark, hollow space filled with writhing roots and something else, faces, twisted and screaming, trapped within the wood. I struggled, but the tree held me tight, its roots snaking around my legs, pulling me in. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was my reflection in the window, my face twisted in horror, just like the ones inside the tree. Now, the tree stands still, closer to the house than ever. My parents think I ran away, but I'm still here, trapped within the twisted bark, one more face among the others, screaming silently, forever part of the crooked tree.
My name is Mark Thompson. I found Duke, a stray German shepherd, wandering near my property on a foggy evening. He was scrawny, with matted fur and eyes that seemed to beg for help. I took him in, figuring I'd get him back on his feet and maybe find him a home. But something was off. Duke would often stare at walls, growling at nothing, and seemed to hear things I couldn't. Soon, strange noises began to echo through the house, soft whimpering around 3 a.m. At first, I thought it was Duke, but he was always asleep when it happened. The cries would seep through the walls, always coming from different corners, too quiet to trace. I tried to ignore it, but the sounds grew louder and more unsettling each night. One night, I woke to find Duke at the foot of my bed, staring at me. The whimpering was now a low wail coming from the hallway. Duke didn't move, just kept his eyes locked on me. I grabbed a flashlight, heart racing, and walked toward the sound. Duke followed silently. The hallway was colder than usual, and when I turned on the light, it flickered and went out. My flashlight revealed fresh claw marks on the floor. Duke whimpered again, but when I turned, he was gone. I swung the light back, and there, at the end of the hallway, was something hunched and twisted like a dog, but wrong. Its eyes glowed red, and around its neck hung Duke's collar. I stumbled back, slamming my door shut as the creature charged. It scratched and growled, rattling the door, then stopped suddenly. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty, and Duke was back in his bed, seemingly asleep. The claw marks had vanished. The next day, Duke's collar was dirty, like it had been buried. I tried putting it on him, but he growled. That night, the whimpering returned, louder and closer, and the growling creature's presence felt more real. I've tried to leave Duke at shelters, far from home, but he always finds his way back. The whimpering never stops, and every night, I hear the creature's growl, and the scraping of claws gets closer. Duke isn't just a dog anymore. Whatever he brought with him, I don't think it's ever going to let us go.
My name is Claire Henderson, and I've never been one to believe in the supernatural. But what happened to me at Rose's beauty salon is something I can't explain, something that still haunts me to this day. It was a rainy evening when I first stepped inside Rose's. The salon had a reputation for being a bit of a local secret, known for its skilled stylists and tranquil atmosphere. As I entered, the dim lighting, soft hum of jazz music, and the faint scent of lavender created an almost dreamlike ambiance. I needed a change, something to shake off the weight of the past few months. The woman at the front desk greeted me with a smile. Her name was Rosa. Her appearance struck me immediately. Pale skin, unnaturally smooth, and her dark hair falling in perfect waves. She led me to a seat by the large mirror and asked what I was looking for. A trim, just a couple of inches off, I said, trying to shake off the slight unease I felt. She nodded, her eyes never quite meeting mine. As she draped the cape around me, I noticed the mirror was fogged slightly, which was strange given the lack of steam or heat in the room. It's just the humidity, I thought. Rosa moved with precision, her scissors gliding effortlessly through my hair. But something about her touch felt cold, almost too light. I glanced up into the mirror again, and that's when I noticed it. There were figures in the reflection. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but the more I focused, the clearer they became. Shadows, faint outlines of people standing behind me, but when I turned my head, there was no one there. Just Rosa, calmly cutting my hair. I swallowed hard and asked, "Do you see that?" Rosa didn't pause or respond. Her focus was entirely on the scissors, snipping rhythmically. My pulse quickened, and I couldn't shake the sensation that something, or someone, was watching me. Minutes passed in silence until I felt an odd pressure on my scalp. Not the gentle tug of hair being cut, but a heavy pressing weight. I winced and opened my mouth to speak, but Rosa beat me to it. "Almost done, Claire," she said softly, her voice low and soothing, as if she knew I was growing uneasy. But that wasn't the strangest part. I hadn't told her my name. I froze, my heart thudding in my chest. How do you know my name?" She finally stopped, placing the scissors on the counter, her eyes meeting mine in the mirror. Her reflection, it wasn't her anymore. The face staring back at me was gaunt, hollowed, as if the very life had been drained from it. Her eyes were dark, endless pits of black, and her mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. "I know a lot about you," she whispered. I jolted out of the chair, the cape sliding off me as I backed away. But the moment I moved, the salon around me seemed to shift. The lights flickered, and the shadows in the mirror grew darker, more defined. I could see them now. Figures of women all sitting in the chairs behind me, their faces pale, their eyes wide and lifeless. The door. Where was the door? I turned, searching for the exit, but all I saw were more mirrors, more reflections of me standing there in panic. I could feel my breath quickening, the room closing in. Rosa stepped closer, her feet barely making a sound on the floor. "You're not the first to come here for a change," she said softly, her voice echoing unnaturally in the room. "But once you sit in my chair, you never leave." I ran, bolting toward what I thought was the front of the salon, but the mirrors distorted everything, twisting the space into an endless maze. My reflection was everywhere, trapped in every angle, looking just as terrified as I felt. The last thing I remember before blacking out was the sensation of cold hands wrapping around my shoulders and that awful ghostly smile of Rosa's fading into the darkness. When I woke up, I was lying outside the salon, drenched in rain, my hair perfectly trimmed. The windows of Rosa's beauty salon were dark, the place boarded up, as if it had been abandoned for years. But every time I pass by that place now, I still see myself in the reflection of the broken windows, staring back at me, trapped inside that nightmare forever.